We spend our lives attempting to build a fortress. We assume that with enough planning, enough financial security, and a strictly optimized routine, we can make ourselves bulletproof against the world. There is a comfort in believing that talent or relentless self-improvement acts as armor. We operate under the assumption that if we work hard enough on ourselves, we can successfully insulate our lives from disaster. But the unexpected and the uncalled for eventually find a way in. Regardless of your bank account or your preparation, life happens. The pressure builds until the surface finally gives way. You can break physically, mentally, or spiritually. No matter how high you build your walls, they cannot stop the world from reaching you and, eventually, breaking you. When the break occurs, whether it's a failed business or a shattered heart, the immediate aftermath feels like a vacuum. The default assumption is that this state is final. We see the damage and conclude that it is the mark of permanent defeat. However, this fracture creates a unique opening. It forces a question that doesn't exist when things are going right. What if this isn't the conclusion of the story? In many ways, being broken is a prerequisite. It strips away the superficial layers of who you thought you were, revealing the raw material underneath that has yet to be tested. The mark left by a trauma is not inherently a sign of failure. It is simply a mark, and the nature of what that mark represents depends entirely on how you navigate the moments that follow. Immediately following a crisis, you enter a psychological space that functions like a valley, a narrow, difficult path between where you were and where you are going. In this valley, your direction is dictated by two distinct signals. Every thought you have and every action you take is a choice between these two irreconcilable internal paths. The first path is paved with worry, grumbling, and blame. Following this signal leads you deeper into the low ground, where the weight of the crisis eventually becomes a permanent state of defeat. The second path requires you to listen for wisdom, gratitude, and faith. This is the more difficult climb, but it is the only route that leads out of the valley and toward a state of growth. While the starting point for both paths is the exact same tragedy, the destinations have nothing in common. The direction of your life is determined by which of these signals you choose to amplify while you are at your lowest. Surviving the valley requires you to consciously decide which internal voice will dictate your reality while you are still surrounded by the wreckage. This choice leads to a phase of active resistance. You don't run from the pain. You stay with the breaking. You decide to remain in the discomfort and fight your way through it, rather than retreating into victimhood. There are no external requirements for this. You don't need money or a degree or a support network. It is a solitary, brute force decision to refuse to let the situation define you. It starts with a shift in language. You look at the sickness or the failure and stop saying, "I can't beat this." You replace it with, "I can beat it. I will beat it. I must." This fight looks different for everyone. It might be battling through a divorce, an academic struggle, or a physical illness. But while the context changes, the internal mechanism, the refusal to run, remains exactly the same. This sustained resistance acts as a forge. By standing your ground against the pressure, you are forced to become faster, smarter, and more resilient simply to keep standing. The fight isn't just a means of surviving the threat. It is the process of using the adversity to reconstruct yourself into someone tougher than you were before. When you eventually emerge from a crisis, you don't return to who you were before the damage happened. The experience of the break and the subsequent fight changes your fundamental composition. Crawling out of that wretched, dismal place requires an ascent that builds a specific kind of internal strength. It is a slow, difficult rise above your former limitations. The very act of fighting on alters you. By refusing to stay down, you replace your initial vulnerability with a stability that can only be earned through friction and pressure. You begin to see the initial break differently. It wasn't the event that ruined you. It was the catalyst that forced you to take the form of someone who has been tested and tempered. Greatness isn't achieved by avoiding the break, but by what you do once you are shattered. By embracing the fight, you define the adversity rather than letting it define you, finally emerging unbroken.